Yeah, the biggest one was probably that Blake Griffin game when he dunked on Miles Golf. That was my game. Yeah, that was my game. And he just went ham. He dunked on Miles Golf. He did like 360s, and he was doing everything that game. And so that was my first. And you remember those late night games? It's like, oh man, I got a late game. It probably ain't gonna be nothing. And the Clippers
hmm
weren't good at that time, so I wasn't expecting much. And then it was just like dunk after dunk after dunk, and I was like, oh, this is really blowing up. And
Yeah.
so that was like the most memorable game. And then Mike Hill and Kevin Connors, I believe, they just made the read so much fun. I still have that highlight today. Mike Hill is my man. Mike Hill was always cool.
hmm
And I think Kevin Connors read the highlight, and Mike Hill was just laughing in the background. He was just like, "Oh my God!" Oh. Mike Hill, you know how animated he gets, so that like made it a real memorable highlight for me. So that's probably my biggest.
In a world where everybody claims to keep it 100, keeping it real, there's some people that actually do. Today's guest on Breaking Through Glass Ceilings with Brian H. Waters is my good friend Cassius Flemming. Cash and I worked together at ESPN, and instantly when we met, he was somebody who kept it 100, always talked about what could he do to help you get what you need. How could he help you become a better production assistant, a better producer in general? So sit back. On today's episode, we discuss our times at ESPN. He's since left Bristol, went to Charlotte, then went to CBS Sports, and now works with Spotify. So I'm very excited for you guys to hear this. Another trip back down memory lane, but I promise you'll enjoy this, and you will also understand why it is important to keep it 100. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today's episode, as always, one I'm very excited for. Let me tell you why I'm excited for this one. This brother right here, when I met him at ESPN, I'm gonna just simply say he was one of the realest people, and not somebody that would just instantly go, run and yell and make sure his voice was heard. But he was somebody that you could simply sit down, talk to, have a conversation, and he would understand and listen to where you was coming from. And that is my good brother Cassius Flemming. Cash, what up, bro?
Yo, what's up, man? I appreciate that, man. I appreciate the kind words. Flattering.
Man, I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we met around, I think it was around 2014 when I had switched over to the highlight section and got a chance to actually be in the screening area. And like I said in the intro, man, you just like was always one of the realest people. Shout out to you, Kahar, Devry, and it's a host of others, but like, it was always it was always fun working with you. When I saw you was in the office, or I should say in screening, I knew it was going to be a good night.
Yeah, man. Those are, sometimes you work so many hours and we're grinding so much that you have to have some kind of fun and comic relief, but also, you know, build bonds with people. And that's one of the things that I've always thought was important in this industry as well.
Yeah, man. So let me ask you this: you from New York. When did you decide to get into broadcast journalism, and why did you choose Delaware State University?
Yeah, I think, it all starts out, I think when we're young, we all have hoop dreams of some kind of sort, and want to make the league or the NFL. So I've always been a sports fan in general. I think once you get to a point where you realize, okay, I really ain't going to make the league, I want to be involved in sports to some capacity. And so, when you really think about it, when we're young, and when you look at like debate shows today, like we've all been on debate shows, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
when you're in school and elementary, at homeroom, you're talking about the game last night. AI had 40, T Mac had 50. Like we did that every single day. So I'm at the cafeteria arguing about sports. I'm at homeroom arguing about sports. Like that's what we did naturally. And so for me, when I got to college, it was like, okay, I know I want to be a broadcaster. Like I was watching ESPN 24/7. I love Stephen A. Smith. I love, Chris Broussard and Stu Scott, rest in peace, and all those guys. So I idolized those dudes. So I kind of wanted to work towards that. So really, I wanted to be a journalist at first. And I'll say I'm not proud of the way I started my college career, to be honest with you, because I was in print journalism at first. And I can remember vividly the very first class I had, and the teacher was kind of going through the syllabus, and she was talking about what the class was going to be about. And she was like, "Yo, we're gonna write X amount of papers, X amount of pages." And I looked at this dude. I didn't know him at the time. We friends now, but I looked at him. I was like, "Yo, I ain't doing that." You know what I'm saying? So I actually got out of print and went to broadcast. I was like, "Nah, I'm not doing that." So broadcast worked out for me, but I feel bad that I didn't stick with print because it's like, I ran away because it's perceived to be too much work. But in terms of broadcast, like I worked at the school radio station, worked at the television station. I did a couple basketball games from a commentary standpoint. Worked for the school paper. Was a sports journalist. Actually, sports editor my senior year. So I kind of dabbled in everything. So broadcast is really just the right path for me.
Okay. And real quick, can you what made you choose Delaware State?
Yeah, I had applied to a lot of HBCUs at the time, and I didn't know much about Delaware State at the time, but I went on a visit, and the visit it felt good. Like the vibes were just kind of cool. And I remember my mother, we had driven. I forgot we drove down south one time, and New York, we passed through Delaware, and she had screamed out, said, "Oh, there goes your school." And she was joking at the time, because I hadn't even really applied or was just looking at everything. And so we actually went on a visit later, and I just liked the vibes. Like I kind of clicked with a lot of people that was there, even though some of them didn't, come back. But it just felt comfortable. It just felt right. And some schools I didn't get accepted to, so some of it was like, okay, I didn't get into this school or that school. And I just thought Delaware was good. It was close enough to New York where it's like, I can drive, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever that ride was. So I just felt good. And just being at HBCU, I think for me was just the right decision.
Now, when you was there, did you get to cover anything cool or something that really stood out that helped you prepare for your next step in your journey?
Yeah, I think one thing I remember one of my teachers he did ask me to cover a baseball game one time, and I'm not the biggest baseball guy in terms of
Mhm.
doing commentary, and I almost kind of shy away like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. But I was like, you know what, I got to take a chance. Like I want to be in sports. I can't just like the sports of basketball and football. I've got to kind of expand my mind, expand my repertoire if that's what I want to do. If I want to work at ESPN one day, which we'll get to, but it's like I can't just be focused on one or two sports. So I kind of got out of my comfort zone with some of that kind of stuff. So I did baseball. I looked into like tennis and all those kind of different things. So I tried to stay well rounded and kind of cover all my bases.
Okay. Now, when you started covering the baseball games, did it make you somewhat start becoming a bigger fan? You're a Yankee fan, right?
Yes, I've always been a baseball fan. Would
Okay.
I call myself an expert in baseball? No. I'm not an expert in it. As being a Yankee fan in the Bronx, it's just like, yo, we wake up and we in the World Series. So
Right.
that's what I remember growing up. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not watching, every single game, but I know, once that postseason come, we're gonna have a parade. That's just how you felt in the Bronx. But so when I was calling games, like yeah, I knew a little bit about the game and everything like that, but I wasn't an expert in it. So I had to get comfortable with doing something, out of the box.
Yeah, you said you guys wake up in a parade. Did you get a chance to go to any of them? What they have about what five of them in your lifetime, right? So did you go to any of them?
Yeah, you know what? I don't remember as a kid going to any really. I was so deep in the Bronx going down there. It probably would have been too hectic, honestly. And I was so young at the time. I'm sure my mother didn't want me down there kind of wilding out in the parade. But, it was always just fun in the neighborhood. Always Yankee fitters all around and people cheering and celebrating. So that was always a big thing.
Yeah, well, I put it like this: you being a Yankee fan, me being an Oriole fan. I know you're an Oakland Raiders fan. I'll trade you my two Ravens championships for the one of those Yankees championships for the Orioles.
Yeah. Look, I mean, look, the Raiders thing, sometimes I wish I would have been a Giants fan, but, it is what it is. I don't switch. I'm not going to switch up now. So.
Hey man, I give you credit. You loyal. Especially with the Knicks. I know a lot of times. I think now it may be accepted if people decide to leave the Knicks. And even for the Raiders, it was looking like that as well. But um, like I said, one of the things I can appreciate you saying is just we always debated sports. We had unofficial debate shows every day in elementary school, and I never really thought about it like that. But before it was put on TV, that's exactly what it was like growing up in school. Any sports fan would tell you, you went to school, you argue. I would tell people all the time, rest in peace, Kobe Bryant, my favorite player of all time. I didn't appreciate Allen Iverson the way I should have because I was so busy defending Kobe. The same with Michael Vick. I was a Donovan McNabb fan at the time, so I didn't get a chance to appreciate him as much as I should have. So I feel like in my adult life, I'm doing better with, say, a Patrick Mahomes versus a Lamar Jackson,
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, we can always give credit to people without tearing someone else down, and I think I think Kobe passing, RIP, I think that kind of woke a lot of people up. Even though, look, debating who's better player, I think is always going to be fun. That's just fun. It's entertaining for television, and it's okay to do it sometimes. But sometimes we go too far. Like even I had to catch myself a few times. Like, I'm really hating on. I'm a Braun fan at the time. I'm really hating on Kobe, and I'm like, nah, I love Kobe. I grew up watching Kobe from adolescent. So I think we're learning now. You don't have to tear someone else down. You can have a healthy debate. You don't have to get angry or get mad at somebody's different opinion. But you see, that's how like NBA Twitter is. People are ready to fight and throw down, for their favorite players. And I had to check myself, like, what am I doing arguing about this? It don't make no sense. It's fun if it's respectful and it's cool, but sometimes it goes too far.
Yeah, and let me ask you this: you said, because one thing I always knew, how much of a huge of a LeBron fan you were. He was one of the people that I could have been in that wouldn't have been able to appreciate him as much. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think when he went back to Cleveland and seeing that drive and he finally winning that championship, that made me appreciate him more as opposed to Heat LeBron. But when you saw Kobe post the when LeBron went to the Lakers and you saw Kobe kind of give him the rite of passage, he welcomed him to the family. Did that help you kind of understand? And obviously Kobe's retired now, but did that help you in any way as far as what you said is appreciating people for their talents without breaking down somebody else?
Yeah, it definitely did in some ways. Look, I didn't think that those guys were enemies or anything like that, but just in the debate show climate and just the climate where everybody just gets off their quick reactions about everything, you're just not really able to appreciate anything anymore. And so when I saw that from Kobe, I'm like, yeah, that's really dope. Like they could be like two black men to big each other up, and it doesn't have to threaten anybody's legacy or anybody's greatness. You can be great in your own right. Kobe can be great in his own right. MJ could be great in his own right. Look, GOAT debates are fun, and they're going to continue. GOAT debates are always going to continue, but everybody can be a GOAT in their own right, where you can have your opinion about who a GOAT is. But I think it definitely woke me up a little bit to say, you know what, I don't have to tear someone else down or criticize this game versus that game, or he's better because of this. You don't have to do that anymore. We can acknowledge, I like Kobe, I like LeBron, I favor LeBron for these reasons, but Kobe's dope. Rest in peace. So that's just how I feel about it now.
Yeah. So now, we you leave. I mean, you graduate from college. Was ESPN your the first stop of your career?
Yeah, that definitely was. Yep.
Okay. Can you talk about how you the process on landing the job, the interview process, or how did you find out about the job? Did you apply, or did you have help with like a NABJ convention or anything?
Yeah, so the story is actually kind of crazy. I had done an internship with TV1 that used to power Black Planet back in the day. So I had that internship in high school. And I remember one day, one of my dudes, he was a mentor to me. I was talking to him one day about, I want to work at ESPN. This is my dream. And he had actually, I think he went to school with Marcellus Wiley. And so, matter of fact, a crazy backstory about my mentor is he was actually on BET Uncut before. The song White Girls, MC Light and Casey. Yeah,
I think I remember.
What I'm saying, it's a crazy. Yeah, it's a crazy. BET Uncut. You look it up. It's on YouTube. But that's my man. And so I was just talking to him one day, just like, hey, man, I really want to get to ESPN. I'm trying to find ways. And he was like, yo, just email Marcellus Wiley and see what happens. So I'm like, I emailed Marcellus Wiley. I mean, he's not going to answer. He's a former pro. He's on ESPN every day. Who am I? But he actually did respond. he was like, yo, send me your resume. So I sent him my resume. I'm like, yo, this is real. And so I think I had got a call back from somebody at ESPN, and they told me to apply for a position. I applied, and then the lines communication just kind of went dead. And then I was like, damn, I guess my opportunity's over. What happened? I couldn't get in contact with them, didn't respond, nothing. So months later, I did go to the NABJ convention. And so I went to the ESPN recruitment table, and I was like, hey, I applied for this position. I spoke to so and so. And I'll be honest with you, my first interview at NABJ was a disaster. It was really bad. My resume was bad. It had a bunch of errors in it. It had like misspellings in it. I was nervous. I was
And
shaking.
what year
The
is this?
recruiter. This was 2010. This was 2010.
Okay. Which
Yeah.
location? Where was NABJ that year?
San Diego,
Oh,
if I'm not mistaken.
okay.
Yeah. And so she tore my resume apart. She was like, this is wrong. This ain't good. What do you mean this? Why do you want to work for ESPN? I couldn't answer nothing. So I was hurt. I'm like, yo, it's over. Like I just blew my opportunity. But I kind of gathered myself up. I fixed everything I needed to fix. And really the way that I got in was I kept seeing her in the convention. And I just kept going up to her and I was just kind of like, hey, remember me? So I kind of used a bad experience to be memorable, if that makes sense. So every time I saw her, I kept like, hey, remember me? You kind of shredded my resume. You threw it up. She was like, oh, yeah, how you doing? So I just kept seeing her and I just kept reminding her. Like, here's my new resume. Hey, I love this. And eventually, she was just like, damn, this dude is persistent. And she was like, yo, I like you. I like that you're persistent. You fixed your mistakes. You corrected them. You didn't kind of fold away. And, she kind of funneled me through into the pool of candidates for the PA program. And then I had an interview, I think about a few weeks or a month later after NABJ. And then I killed that interview and then I got off the position. So it just worked out that way.
Wow, man. I think it's important.
Yeah, Brian, you breaking up.
Experience and made it work for you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yo, yeah, you broke up for a minute. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know you have to edit it. My bad.
Oh, okay. All right, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, I think what was great about this is you took something that could have been bad, quite frankly. You could have said, I don't want to see her, and you could have avoided her. Because a lot of times people can't take constructive criticism. So when that happens, they fold. But you made sure she remembered who you was. So yeah, I think that was cool. So how long did you have to wait? NABJ was around August that year, July, August.
I think it was definitely August. So I think late August I did the interview and I started in September. September 20th to be exact. I always remember that day. So
okay, wow. So yeah, it's funny. So my date was September 9th, but mine's the same thing. Mine was 2013 though, but it was in Orlando. So yeah, but it was definitely that NABJ influx. For me, with my class, it was me and Wes Remsen had both from the NABJ that year. So yeah. So now you get there. Do you remember your first assignment in rotation?
I think it was just logging for a while and just kind of figuring that kind of flow out.
Okay. Can you talk about that part? You was just logging. Was it just the games and stuff?
Yeah, I started logging. I was logging pretty much. It wasn't even like real games yet. They had me log like arena football and just stuff like really obscure, different kind of sports at the time. So I wasn't logging any big game MLB, NBA, or NFL things. But they, I think they just kind of wanted me to get a cadence and the feel for just logging with some of the software that they use over there. So that was different. It was boring at first, I think, for anybody, because you're like, when am I going to get into the action? When am I going to start doing some of the big stuff? So that was kind of like my first experience there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool that they had you do that way though, because you're not thrown into the fire. I know for me, my first time logging was my first highlight. So I wasn't even sure. Yeah, my first and I didn't come into highlights until March 2014, and my first game was maybe February, and my first game was Lakers Blazers, and this was when Kobe was hurt, and
Mm.
you know, granted we shadowed somebody 3 times, like we did 3 shadow shifts, and then we got thrown into a game. But
I
yeah, so
remember
I had
that.
to figure out how to log on the job.
Yeah, they really accelerated the pace after a while. But when I first started, there were so many veteran PAs out there and APs. There was
Hmm.
no rush for you to just jump in. So it was a real slow process. We're just going to kind of walk you down slowly, and then we're going to just kind of let you progress time and time.
Oh, okay, so now you know what, that makes sense though. And you also figure when I started, it was the year. Well, I started about a month or two after Fox Sports One had launched. So from what I heard, that they Fox Sports had came and took a lot of people.
They just did. They definitely did.
Were you tempted to go?
I mean, I definitely applied for sure. I won't
Okay.
lie about that. It was LA. No
Yeah.
disrespect to Connecticut, but it was LA.
Hmm.
So I want to live in LA. LA's nice, nice weather. So I definitely did apply, but I didn't get picked. Of course, I stayed. But yeah, a lot of people had left at that time.
Yeah. Now, look, before we really start getting into what you did, I remember, earlier you mentioned uh, looking up to people like Stephen A. Smith, Chris Broussard, Stuart Scott. Did you get a chance to meet them within your first year, or did that take some time down the line?
Chris Broussard, actually, who's still actually a good friend and mentor today, I met
Hmm.
him back in college, actually. There was some connection that a professor had to him, and he came to our broadcast class one day, my senior year. And I had spoken to him a little bit. I was a bit shy. I'm a laid back kind of dude. I was like, that's Chris Broussard. I'm kind of shy. I don't. But I had spoken to him. He was cool. And then he's actually got a good memory because then I saw him in the green room. The green room used to be there. People used to be there before a show started. And I
Hmm.
was like, hey, Chris, you might not remember me, but, I met you at Delaware State. And, we kind of just built a relationship from there. So he's probably the biggest person that I've built relationships with. I mean, I've said what up to Stephen A. few times, of course. Stu Scott, you hand him your first shot sheet. That's always a crazy experience, seeing him live and doing this thing live. So, those things were cool. Prompting for Chris Berman was always, fun and stuff like that. But Chris Broussard is probably the biggest person I've built a real relationship with.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely like you said, we're fortunate. We see a lot of people that we meet throughout the years who, when they find out you worked at ESPN, they will say like, "Oh, well, did you ever get a chance to meet this one? You ever get a chance to meet that one?" And then, when you do say like, "Hey, yeah, I met Stuart Scott, rest in peace." Yeah, like you said, I think you just hit it right on the head. That first time you hand him that shot sheet is an experience, especially what he means to the culture.
Exactly. I mean, he paved the way for everyone, for a lot of us. So you always got to pay homage.
Yeah, did you ever get a chance to you ever get a chance to like really sit down and talk with like Stephen A or Skip when he was there? Like during the first take, like when first take was at its height?
Not really, but one thing about Skip is actually really cool. Like, I know a lot of people kill him for a lot of things and stuff like that, but Skip used to come say what up to me, and
Yep.
I was like, yo, I had to look around, like, you talking to me? I'm just a PA. But he was cool like that. He was just like, yo, good morning, how you doing? I was like, yo, what's up? I'm chilling. So I spoke to him a couple times. He didn't really go in depth too much. Like I wish I could have spoke a little bit more about sports with him, but he was dope. He was cool. But that's really the depth of my conversation with at least Skip Stephen A. Honestly.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. People don't like to believe me when I say it. I I'm a huge Skip Bayless fan. One of the things, and we really see it right now at the time of this recording. It's the we're dealing with a lot of social injustices, and he's been very outspoken about it because he'll tell you he grew up practically raised by a black woman. And when
I didn't
I
know that.
was
I actually didn't know that.
yeah, he him and Shannon Sharp had a good conversation about it, and he talks about the he said straight up his mother was a train wreck and his grandmother was working, and I think the lady who worked for his grandmother, he met her, and she took him to a black church, and he said he never felt more love than being in a black church. And the reason why he felt that the black church welcomed him with open arms because he was the only white kid in there, and they knew what it was like to feel like to be the only person of your color in another environment. So yeah, it's a real good conversation. You know, they clipped, I believe it's clipped off on Shannon Sharp's Instagram or the Undisputed Instagram. But I know I used to one day. You remember when I was working on Mike and Mike in the morning, it would come on after first take. So every day, Skip would do his own makeup around 9:45, and I went
Yeah, I
in there.
remember.
Yeah, and I went in the restroom one day, and I was talking to him, and we spoke, and I said, "Can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Sure." And at the time, y'all used to kill me about loving the Cowboys and the Ravens, but yeah, but Maga Dak has definitely turned me off to the Cowboys. I don't hate them, but I don't, I can't I don't get emotionally attached to them the way I used to. But I
Mm.
asked him about it, and he told me, he said, "Well, I have no problem with that." And he broke it down. He said, "I mean, how could you not like it?" And it was like he was in TV mode. He said, "How could you not like him? Those colors, the star on the helmet, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin." And I was just like, "Man, Skip Bayless said I can like the Cowboys and Raiders. I don't want to hear nothing from nobody." So, and he was, and then I would see him again, and he would always speak, and that was the thing, like what people don't understand. That's always one of the big questions. What's Skip like? What's Skip like? So I could always appreciate that. I know Wes said he had a chance to talk basketball with him one time, and he thought it was like the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, Skip, it was cool, just talking to him. It was just cool that he, reached out first. And
Yeah,
I respect that. I respect it because not a lot of people do that. Look, I don't know everything about him. I wasn't best friends with him, but I thought that was just, worthy and respectful.
yeah, and I think it's really cool. We had I know it was quite a few people that who were on air talent, but never acted like production people were below them. You know what I mean?
Mm, right.
So, um, what was your next assignment? Did you jump right in the highlights after login?
Yeah, yeah, went straight to highlights. Went straight to highlights after that.
Okay. Do you have any highlights that you remember that like really stuck out, or one that you was like really proud of?
Yeah, the biggest one was probably that Blake Griffin game when he dunked on Miles Golf. That was my game. Yeah, that was my game. And he just went ham. He dunked on Miles Golf. He did like 360s, and he was doing everything that game. And so that was my first. And you remember those late night games? It's like, oh man, I got a late game. It probably ain't gonna be nothing. And the Clippers
Mhm.
weren't good at that time, so I wasn't expecting much. And then it was just like dunk after dunk after dunk, and I was like, oh, this is really blowing up. And
Yeah.
so that was like the most memorable game. And then Mike Hill and Kevin Connors, I believe, they just made the read so much fun. I still have that highlight today. Mike Hill is my man. Mike Hill was always cool.
Hmm.
And I think Kevin Connors read the highlight, and Mike Hill was just laughing in the background. He was just like, "Oh my god!" Oh. Mike Hill, you know how animated he gets, so that like made it a real memorable highlight for me. So that's probably my biggest one.
Yeah. And see, I missed out on Mike Hill. I heard a lot of great things about him, but by the time I got there, he was gone.
Yeah, Mike was definitely cool. I used to prompt for him on the Highlight Express a few times, but he was always a good dude. That's the man right there.
Yeah. Now, when you did you like I hated highlights. I ain't gonna lie to you. Did you enjoy it, or you rather have done something else?
Um, some days it was great, some days it was tough. I think when
Okay.
you have a good game, it was always good. It
Hmm.
was always fun to do a good game. Sometimes it was bad because it blew up so much that you had to cut like 4 or 5 versions of it for Sports Center and then the specialty shows and then the late Sports Center. So that was probably the most frustrating part. And then if it was a late game or it went into overtime, I didn't like that. I didn't like when baseball went into extra innings because I wanted to go home. I was so tired. I didn't like those things. But I did enjoy highlights because I was able to tell a story through my lens
Hmm.
the way I wanted to do it, the way I wanted. I really, my thing was I like to break down games from a real a real analytical standpoint. So I was always looking at rebounds and assists and who did what and, record breaking moments and stuff like that. So that's why I enjoyed it for me.
Okay, see, and that's good. Like I think I always said because I got in the highlights in March and I was out by June. And I've told people as much as I love baseball, I probably would have hated it had I stayed in highlights that whole season because I just got so annoyed with it. And like you said, just those extra inning games will kill you.
Man, I remember one game. I forgot. I remember. I think it was the Pirates, and that dream went to like 18, 19. And I was just there, miserable. And at that time you still had to log the game, so you had to go do the highlights and come back and log everything that you missed. And I was
Mhm.
there till like probably 2, 3 a.m. Seriously, and
I
I was
believe
just
it.
sick. And I was just like, man, I hate these extra inning games. And that's when the highlights was really tough at those times, especially with baseball. It was rough. I liked the games where it was just a 2-0, somebody hit a home run, I could get a nice defensive play in, and I'm out. So
Hmm.
that's the highlights I wanted to do.
Yeah, man, those days, and see with me, I had got shin splints around um the spring of 2014, and there was a highlight. I'll never forget. It was the Twins and the Yankees. No, Twins and the Dodgers were playing, and for some reason, the game went into like extra innings, and it ran up against where it had to air on Baseball Tonight and um Sports Center at the same time. And
Right.
shout out to Blake. I can't remember his last name right now, but he took the highlight to Sports Center, but I had to run it all the way. And this is an old screening. We had to really run downstairs and around the corner. I had to run the highlight
Yeah.
to them to get it to them just in time. And it
I
was the
remember those
worst.
days.
Yeah, thankfully, I got highly skilled on my report. And I think that was the thing that I used to hate about it because I would have a good night and then they wouldn't give me a quote unquote report card, which they used to give people for those who do not understand. It would be like
Mm.
a report on how well you did on your highlight that night. But let me mess up. Oh, I was getting all types of unskilled or whatever the worst grade you could get.
Right.
So, but what else did you do while you were there?
Yeah, so after highlights, I worked on NBA Tonight. I worked on NFL Primetime. Those are probably the two biggest shows that I did, but I was a staple in both of those for a while. So I think that was cool, just being able to focus on one sport and one show. My creativity kind of began to shine through in terms of making content, in terms of segments, in terms of creating montages, in terms of creating, just all of those kind of different things and elements. So that was probably like my biggest highlights there.
Okay. Now, did you get a chance to do any event, or was you always in the studio?
I was always in the studio, man. And that's one thing I regret. I wish I would have been more vocal about getting a chance to travel and do different things, but
Hmm.
I never got a chance to do it. I'm trying to think if there was anything that I did that I can't think. I never got to travel anywhere, to be honest. I never did. So that's probably one part that I missed out on.
Okay. Yeah, the only place literally I went to social media my last 7 months, and had I started in social media, I probably would have stayed at ESPN a little bit longer. It was like my favorite, but the only place I got to travel to was the barbershop. If you remember, they did a segment. It was during the first after game one of the first series of the Cavs Warriors, and they did like a recap on it. And I got a chance to go. Rob King was there, and I really just, to be honest with you, I went because I was the black person on the team. And shout out to Steve Brayman. He kept it real. He said, "Look, we need somebody black who really could understand how a barbershop content should be produced."
For sure, for sure. That makes sense.
But it was cool. Um, but like, what was the experience like with NFL primetime? Because the NFL season is so intense, and I know from a Mike and Mike standpoint, when the season was over, I was exhausted. I was there the year that the Russell Wilson threw that bogus interception during the Super Bowl.
Mm,
But
mm.
um, what was it like for you? Because I was sitting there knowing that I had to watch the games on Sunday just so that my Monday would be easier. Now I can imagine from you actually putting together a full NFL show. How was that?
Yeah, so on Sundays, I would come in around, I feel like I'd be there from 12 to about 8 every day. So I kind of had to keep an eye on every single game, what was going on, the biggest storylines, take notes. Then I had to run over to building 4, I want to say. That's where all the players and everybody and the analysts used to stay. And I had to go talk to, usually it was Merrill Haj and my man Tim Hasselback on the show. And I had to kind of gather what their biggest thoughts were, what kind of breakdown tapes that they wanted to do. And so that was my primary thing on Sundays. I used to prep kind of all of that stuff. And then Mondays, I used to have to be in around 6 a.m. because the show was usually at 1. So I used to get in at 6, cut a few breakdown tapes, go with the editor, do those. And then we had to do the highlights. And remember, we had to do special highlights because we have different elements, different transitions. It was a deep dive pretty much. So it wasn't just always taking the Sports Center version. Sometimes we had to tweak because I remember Sundays, the PAs on Sports Center used to cut NFL primetime highlights, but a lot of times we had to reconfigure a lot of those. Remember transitions, highlight tapes. The analyst might want to point something out. We had to do different plays. So a lot of times those highlights kind of got scrapped. So it was probably only like 3 or 4 highlights that stayed, and then we had to switch out a whole bunch of other ones. So that was a lot. But I love NFL so much, it didn't really bother me. I lived for it, and I think just being around former players that made the experience fun and learning. Because I got to learn a lot. You know, we always talk about sports and we can debate and do other things, but a lot of us don't really know crap. You know, I didn't know as much as I thought I did about the NFL until I sat with Merrill Haj and I sat with Tim Hasselback, and he's reading defenses in front of me, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. And he's talking about routes, and they're talking about the play calling and formations and all those kind of things. So I got a real in-depth look at how some of that stuff worked, and that kind of just pushed me throughout the season to just kind of keep it going. I mean, it was a lot of tired days. That Sunday, Monday was rough, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. I think that's the beauty about working with people who actually played the game. You getting that insight that you can't get anywhere else. Was there
Exactly.
any of your other favorite players that you work with?
Let's see. Well, Flip Saunders, rest in peace, on NBA Tonight. Flip Saunders was really cool, and he showed me a lot about NBA and basketball. He also told me like great stories about KG and stuff like that. So that stuff was always fun. In fact, actually, he had put me on his radar to go work for the Timberwolves when he left. It never
Hmm.
came to fruition, of course, but like that's how close we were. He was like, "Yo, I got you on a short list. Once I get into the Timberwolves, I might have you come through and do something." But it never happened, unfortunately. And then he passed away, which was trash. But I liked working with him. Avery Johnson, when he was there, was cool. Antonio Davis was really, really cool. Chris Mullin was cool on NBA Tonight. So there's a lot of guys, but those are some of the ones that stick out on top of my head.
Oh, okay. Now, you brought up Antonio Davis. A couple weeks ago, I had DeVry Smothers, a good brother, and we talked about the basketball days at ESPN.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I remember, man, when you joined our team, I ain't gonna lie to you, I felt you was the missing piece. I was like, oh man, we got Cash. And I know you a humble dude, but I felt that, for me personally, that made me humble myself because I realized, okay, I can't move around the way I used to. And granted, I was only 28 as opposed to being 33, but I was like, man, I knew what my mind wanted to like run this fast, but my body couldn't. And I was able, I realized, okay, my role is going to be to keep the fouls off Bache. If Bache and me and him are close to the play, I'll raise my hand and try to take the fouls to keep them in the game. You came in and you always had like a smoothness to your game. You know, when did would you plan on another team before that? Like, how did you get recruited officially?
To play for I was playing on another team. I forgot who it was, but they weren't good. No disrespect. But I always used to hoop on because remember they had the overruns. It was
Yeah.
like Tuesdays at 12. So I used to hoop with
Uh-huh.
DeVry and Kalo and the rest of the crew. And I was like, damn, I want to play with y'all. Like y'all are dope. It was fun. And so that's how I think. I forgot who I spoke to, and I was just like, I just want to join you. I just want to run with y'all, and it'd be dope. And I think the one thing that sticks out is that I think it wasn't a championship game, but it was one game, and I had highlights that day early, and I was
Hmm.
so sick because I couldn't come to the game. I think y'all lost, and I was
Yep.
like, damn, I wanted to play. I was so hurt because we were killing that. I remember that season, like we was kind of killing it in the rec league, and I was upset, man. I had to work that day, and I was just like, damn, I was tight. But yeah, I just loved hooping with y'all, man. It was fun.
Yeah, it was and I because I remember one game, I think was that the year we was I think that was the year we was 6-0 and 1 or 2. And because I remember my daughter was born, and so when I came back, I was like, well, she was supposed to come that Friday. She didn't come till that Saturday. But I remember talking when I came back. I was like, "Yo, did we win? Did we win?" And I don't even think it was a playoff game. It was just a regular season game, and they said that we had a tie. But I think it might have been the playoff game that you missed then.
It was. It definitely was. I remember that vividly, man.
Okay, yeah, oh, yeah, and I think, and I know we had another one where I was told the ride, and I think you may have been on this team when we got to the championship and we lost because I actually had the championship belt in my book bag. I had brought one of my wrestling belts in my gear bag to celebrate, that way we could take the picture.
I remember that photo. I do remember that photo.
Yeah, did you get a chance to hoop with any former players?
I did not, but I heard like a few guys got out there before. I forgot who, but I know a few guys from ESPN used to be hooping out there. I never got a chance to though.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to either. I know Kyle Reether, he had posted one time on Snapchat that he had just hooped with Antonio Davis one time, and then I heard Chauncey Billups had hooped a couple of times too.
I heard that. Yeah, I did hear some stories about Chauncey hooping. I did hear that too.
Yeah, I one time, man. I was working with Bruce Bowen, and we was getting ready for. I was in social media. It was me and one of our former colleagues, and he told Bruce Bowen that James Harden was good at defense. And Bruce was like, "What?" And he said, "No, no, no." And you know how sometimes people get to talking real fast, and he said the same thing. And just like you said, it takes you back to like you could think you know one thing about sports, but then when you sit down and talk to these players who did this professionally, you realize how much you don't know.
It's a different game, yo. A whole different ball game.
So after ESPN, man, well, I should say, what was it? Obviously you enjoyed your time there, but when did you realize it was time to move on to bigger and better things?
Yeah, I think I became stagnant after a while. I was there for 6 years. Early on, I felt like there was promise there, but I was kind of just treading water after a while, and I didn't get promoted to AP. Well, I remember I went to the Charlotte office in my last year. So I was in Charlotte for like a year,
Hmm.
and I remember just grinding. I'm thinking, okay, I've been here, 5, 6 years. I'm gonna get this AP spot, and then we can continue. It never happened. And then I just began to tread water, and I was just doing the same things, and I wasn't able to kind of grow and spread my wings. I was ready to do different things. I had a lot of ideas that just kind of I felt like I wasn't being heard. And so after a while, it's like, it's just time to move on. It's time to do something different, to get that promotion that I wanted, and throw my hand in the pot and something different. I want to take a chance.
Yeah. Now, um before we get to CBS, you said you had went to
Mm,
Charlotte, which is crazy. I forgot about it, even though
mm,
now I specifically remember you coming to the gym one day right before you had moved. What was that
yep.
process like? Just uprooting from Connecticut, going to Charlotte, obviously getting better weather, but still still being in the same company. What was the process like?
So I mean, I loved it. The setup for the relocation was cool. You get
Okay.
all that relocation money and all that kind of stuff. Charlotte was fun. I could actually go to do things after work. I can go
Mm-hmm.
to a game. I can, like the Hornets Arena wasn't too far from where we worked at. It was like a good 20 minutes away. The nightlife was just better. Even though I was close to New York, but of course on weekends and stuff, you couldn't really do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fun. Now, in terms of office, it was different because you had to readjust all over again because none of these people really know you. Yeah, you've been with the company that long, but they don't know your work ethic. They don't know what you know how to do. They don't know who you really are. They can get stuff through the grapevine. So I had to kind of relearn everybody, prove myself somewhat again that, okay, this is how I work, this is who I am, and gain trust from some of the producers and CPs that were there. So that was a tedious part, but once you've been in the system so long, it's like, yo, I showed them relatively quickly that I know how to do things. But the transition wasn't that bad, but it was different. Going down there, I was specifically told, yo, this ain't Bristol. And I was like, damn, which I mean, like, yo, we just do things differently down here. And it was a different type of atmosphere. And so that was probably the one adjustment, but other than that, it was great.
Okay. Man, so now you decided to move on to CBS. What was that experience like, and what would you doing now as an AP?
Yeah, so CBS, when I got there, I was put on a morning NFL show. So that was difficult because I had to come in at 4 a.m. on Sundays. And that's one schedule in this industry that I will never do again. I just can't do it. I can't function at 4 a.m. in the morning or being up
Mm-hmm.
at 3. And it was worse because Saturday nights I had to prep and I was getting out of there like 7, 8 o'clock. So that
Oh,
turnaround was crazy. Again, I love football so much that I got through it, but I did that for a year and I was like, thankfully, I proved myself enough that I got off the show and got to another NFL show on Mondays. But I had started out doing that pretty much 4 a.m. shift every Sunday, and that tight turnaround was killing me. But I think the difference with CBS was I really got a chance to be heard a little bit more. It was a little bit smaller. The sports group was a little bit smaller, so my ideas shine a little bit more. I was able to contribute to segments a little bit more. My ideas actually made it on air more times than not.
mm-hmm.
So that was good. I had, close relationships with the producers as well. So that was really the one thing I valued about CBS.
Okay. Now, did you when you worked there, did you have any familiar faces from ESPN?
Yeah, actually, one of my homies who had worked at ESPN was actually there already. So that made it good and comfortable for me to make a transition.
Okay. Now, when you was working on the shows, was you just doing segments, or you was doing like highlights, or were you producing like montages?
A little bit of everything. It was highlights, montages. There were, script writing for some of the bumps and montages. Um, and then segment ideas, coming up with questions for talent. So just a little bit of everything. So just a lot of the same stuff on ESPN, but I think just a more expanded role.
Okay. I can imagine, coming from ESPN and having that experience and having access to guys like a Hasselback helped you for that next role.
Yeah, absolutely. It was easy to make that transition and kind of let my knowledge shine through. The only difference with CBS, unfortunately, is I didn't get to interact with talent much because they were across the street at another building. And that's
Oh,
probably the one thing that was tough about it is I never got to really speak to a lot of the guys over there. Maybe once or twice I would go over there, but I never got that opportunity to. So that kind of sucked. But I still built good relationships with a few guys, so that was good enough for me.
okay. Now, did you get to travel with them?
I did. I went to the Super Bowl in Atlanta, so that was my
Oh,
first travel
nice.
experience. Finally.
Man, so what was that like?
Oh man, I don't know if I could even say some of this stuff over the airwaves. Nah, I'm not saying, but it was some of the things I think working on a truck was the toughest part. I had never been on a truck before, and we were on there all day, man. I mean, we were on there from like 10 a.m. to almost 12 a.m. sometimes. I mean, we had our breaks in between. That
Mhm.
was the wackest part, is just being on a truck all day. I got to go to a few parties. I just said, screw it. I got to go do something. I can't be in Atlanta and not go to at least one party in Super Bowl week. So
Right.
I finessed a few parties. I got through there. Um, But just traveling was cool, having per diem and expense and stuff. I never had that life before.
Hmm.
Being able to just buy food and expense it and have nobody say nothing to you. That's kind of a dope experience to have in this industry. Networking, of course. Being on a truck is tough again, but it is what it is. That's the road life sometimes. You got to be on that truck all day. You got to put that work in. But outside of that, that was a good travel experience.
Now you was doing like a lot of like graphics producing and stuff and montages on the truck.
Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. We did graphics, we did montages, we had to cut all the interviews, all the sound from opening night. The not opening night, but where they had the press conferences on the field and they're talking to all the guys. So we had to turn all that stuff around really quickly, and we would have guests going through in and out, in and out. So we had to kind of just turn all of that stuff around and make sure it was running smoothly.
Now, did you get a chance to go on the field at any point in time?
I actually did before. It was crazy. My pass allowed me to get into the arena. Now I left stupidly. I left Saturday night. Why I did
Hmm.
that, I have no idea. But I think I probably could have got access to the games in some capacity. But I did go
Okay.
into the field. I didn't get on the field, but I was on like the decks, the upper decks. So I was able to just kind of just look and walk around the arena and chill. But that was about it. But I wish I probably would have stayed till Sunday and went. But then again, coming back Sunday would have been a headache. So or Monday morning. So I'm kind of glad I did.
Yeah. Now Atlanta was that Patriots Rams?
That was Patriots Rams. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I know. So I did some work with local IBW union, and my buddy Leo, who hooked me up with it, went to that Super Bowl. But last year I covered I've covered a few games. The best one was the Ravens Jets for obvious reasons. But
Mm,
the thing was just being out there. And granted, well, I did CBS and Fox games, but
mm,
the fun part was being on the field during the games. You seeing like I'm a Lamar Jackson fan, obviously, and to see him in person run is like amazing. But
mm.
the hard part is after the game when you got striking, you got to take all the cords and cables and then unplug the truck, put everything beneath. Like, man, that stuff be like, you be like, man, I
That's
thought
just
I
hard work.
it's hard work. And I remember telling my dad was always about going, his thing was he always worked hard so I didn't have to. And what he meant by that was that I could essentially choose what I wanted to do. So, and I remember when I told him like the first night I did it, and he was like, "Wait, what you doing?" And I said, "Well, we have to pack the trucks and this, that, and other." He said, "Man, you want part-time work? You want to come where I'm at?" I said, no, because this is still sports." And granted, you lifting those heavy cameras, man. That's like you can't pick up by yourself. Like you just can't, you know. So yeah, I'm good, man. I imagine, like I said, the Super Bowl experience was crazy. Um, but after CBS, man, you decided to leave, and you are where you are now, and that's Spotify. You talk about why the jump and why almost like kind of out of sports full time into Spotify.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm still doing sports. I'm doing sports
Okay.
podcasts.
Oh,
Yeah, so
nice.
I'm still doing sports. Honestly, I think because it was 10 years deep in television,
Hmm.
and I think my last year at CBS, I started to feel the burnout a little bit, and I was feeling like, what's next for me? What's going to be
Hmm.
next? What's different? As much as I love TV, you get tired. You need a recharge sometimes. And so I had saw the position on LinkedIn and I applied. I was like, Spotify's doing sports? I didn't know that. So I was like, okay, I'll just apply. I didn't really hear anything back for months. I thought I had actually forgot about it. And then I got an email one day randomly like, hey, we got your resume. We want to interview for this position. I was like, yo. And this was months later. I had completely just given up on getting that spot. And, I went on the interview, the preliminary interviews with HR. And then, I met my boss and we spoke. And she spoke really highly of me. She enjoyed the conversations and she decided to take a chance on me. And so far, so good.
Yeah, man. So you get a chance to produce. You did. Do you? do you edit like the podcast, or you kind of like help put them in the system without going into too much detail? Is that like what you do now?
Yeah, so my job, I haven't produced any pods yet, but
Okay.
a lot of our job is kind of, going through the landscape of finding new podcast talent is kind of like my job, and finding, because we want to do exclusive deals with people, and so most of my job is kind of analyzing pitch decks. People send me pitches all the time, and I kind of go through them. Sit down with my boss and say, hey, I think this could work X, Y, Z. We have some show planning. When we're launching new shows, we have to sit down as a collective and plan. Okay, we want to launch here. Here's a trailer that we want to do. The podcast cadence should be this X, Y, Z. It might be this long. We want to make sure we're hitting these points. So that's kind of like what my day to day is kind of like.
Okay. Well, man, that's pretty cool. It's what would you say to people who like really want to work in sports but not sure if they should, or not sure what they want to do, or not sure how to get started?
Yeah, at first you have to have the passion for it. And
Mm.
that's easier said than done all the time. But if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to make it in this industry. Because there's so many guys that I started with that they left. They got out of it. They couldn't take it. I
Mhm.
think one of the biggest things people need to realize is it's not going to be easy. The hours are grueling. You've been through it. I've been through it. There's times where I wasn't able to enjoy my early 20s. I was always working. I missed out on a lot of holidays, 4th of July, Christmas, Thanksgiving. I couldn't go spend time with my family because I was working. So you have to be prepared for those things. If you're not prepared for those things, then you might want to find another line of work. This isn't a 9 to 5 job, unfortunately, until you make it to a position where it is 9 to 5. But most of the times, you're going to be working obscure hours. You're going to be working long hours. And if you're not dedicated to it, if you don't, have the passion for it, it's not going to be for you, and you're going to be miserable. So I think it's good now. I think there's a lot more positions for kids coming out of college. When we started, there really was no social media manager. There weren't those kind of jobs. They didn't really exist that as much now, and they're so prevalent now. And so one of the things for a lot of kids that come out is they're so well rounded now. I was talking to one of my mentees. She was like, hey, I know how to do the whole Adobe Premiere Suite and Photoshop and Illustrator and all. And I'm like, damn, I don't even know how to do some of those things. I've learned, but they're coming out well rounded with everything. And so you have to ask yourself what separates you from the crew, because everybody has the same skills now. So, if you're not passionate about it, if you're not being proactive in working your craft, everything is easy now. Our phone now is a computer. So if you're not recording your podcast on your phone to practice, or if you're not shooting video, if you're not doing reporter stand-ups on your own, you're losing. You should be doing that every single day to perfect your craft. You should be having that. You should be building up a portfolio on YouTube or Vimeo or whatever you want, your Twitter page. You should always be working on your skills and your craft and make sure that you're well-rounded and you're good. Because when you do apply for that job, everybody's going to have the skill set. What's going to separate you? And jobs want to see extracurriculars. They want to see how proactive you've been. They want to listen to your podcast, or they might want to watch your YouTube videos and some of those things. So my advice would be work on your craft every day. It's easy. There's really no excuse. You have a phone. There's apps that you can do all of these things on. You can edit on your phone. You can do everything. So you should be working on your craft every single day and be passionate about it.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, man. I know for me personally, I tell people, and they're so surprised when they hear this, and this was in 2013, when I tell them that during my the car wash part of the interview at ESPN, I showed
Mm-hmm.
them the wrestling realm, and granted, it looks way better now than it did then. But when I
Mm-hmm.
showed it to shout out to Allison, I can't remember her last name, but she was the person I had spoke with. She got excited, and I was like, "Oh, it's I told her, I said, this is the show I created while I was in college. Me and my buddy, we love to talk wrestling, but it also gave us those reps we needed to get better at producing content." And
Mm-hmm.
she was like, "Wow!" And I tell people that all the time. I said, your show or your piece of media, whatever you're doing, is experience. It's important, and you just hit it right on the head. And I'm so happy you said that, because they get to hear from a different voice than hearing me say it all the time. Um,
Right.
I got I gotta ask you this. The name of the show is called Breaking Through the Glass Ceiling. When was the moment that you broke through the glass ceiling in your career?
Making it to ESPN for me was that moment because it was a dream for so long. And I used to tell people, yo, I'm gonna be in ESPN one day. I'm gonna be on TV one day with Stephen A. I mean, I didn't get there yet. You know, maybe one day I'll get there, but that was that was my dream to be at ESPN. And so I didn't really have a plan on how to get there. I didn't know how I was gonna do it, but everything just fell into place. So stepping through that door, look, too many people can't say that they made it to ESPN. A lot of people spend a career trying to get there. I made it right out of college, right after graduation, just months later. So I'm
Mhm.
always grateful for that opportunity. So that was definitely my breakthrough moment. And I'm still in the industry now. I'm still here. I'm still going strong, and I'm still making moves. So that's really a blessing.
Yeah, Cash, man, I have to say, bro, I'm proud of you. I definitely appreciate you always when I was there in Connecticut, always being a listening ear, always taking, time out your day, whether it was to show me how to do a shot sheet, a run sheet, or even a Moss sheet, or just being a listening ear when, some of the HPs may have been getting on my nerves. Or, whether no matter who you was with, you always spoke, because there are people like that. Unfortunately, they act like they don't know you, but or even if it was on the court, you would say, well, man, why don't you next time box out a little bit more or do something, put your body in a better position, So I always appreciate that. And
Well,
even now to this day, bro, um, we no longer work there, but clearly we met a lot of people, but unfortunately, you don't talk to people on a regular basis, but your support means the world because you will take time out just to say, hey man, just seeing how you doing, seeing how everything is, or like, hey man, I just shared your podcast, and it always means a lot, man, when especially if it's like the wrestler show, people who might not be in the wrestling but say, hey, this is something you're passionate about, something to share. So I just want to make
yo,
sure
hey,
hmm?
now my bad to cut you off, but just to go off your point real quick, that is one thing in this industry, especially being black, we have
Hmm.
to pay it forward. And that's something that I've prided myself in every stop that I've been at. I always got to pay it forward to somebody. There are a lot of people that they do get Hollywood and they forget about where they come from and their roots. And look, you can't mentor every single person. I get it. I used to feel that way. Why this person ain't reached back out and stuff. I get it. You can't always do it. But if I'm in a proximity to you as a young black man or woman, I'll always give an ear and say, yo, if you need anything, come holler at me. And I think that that's something that's lost sometimes is people are not paying it forward. You should always try to lift as you climb and give people opportunities, tell people about things, help them network, help them, tell them how to move properly. And that's one thing I've always prided myself on. So I appreciate you saying that. I wish more people would start doing it. I think, of course, with the climate now, I think a lot more people are going to say, hey, you need to wake up and do things differently. But
Hmm.
always pay it forward. I don't care even if you're a production assistant, I don't care if you don't make it to be an executive, a CEO, whatever, you can always help somebody that's coming up because the wheel is not going to stop. Kids are going to keep coming in from college, from seniors, and they come into the industry, and people are going to climb and do different things. Always got to just give that lifting hand to somebody. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, man. I'll never forget, man. And we a lot of times in this world, we don't give people their flowers while they living, and that's what I feel is important. And I feel it's just important that people hear it, to see, that what, Cash is a good dude. Cash will help you out, and I know you will. I've seen you. Just in NABJs, talking to people, helping them out, and it's definitely. I will definitely say, the good Lord is going to continue to bless you, man.
Nah, I appreciate that, brother, for sure, man. It's always
Yeah,
blessings.
yeah. Let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, right now I'm on Instagram, QNJuice, QINJUICE. My Twitter is CFlem88, CFLEM88. I've been kind of chilling on Twitter right now with everything going on, but yeah, I'm on both of those, so you can definitely hit me up if anybody wants to chat.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard what he said. Make sure you pay it forward.
Appreciate it, brother.
Appreciate it. ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for this week's episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings. I really hope you enjoyed that. Like I said before at the beginning, Cash is one of those people who lives, breathes, and sleeps keeping it 100. And that's the reason why I had to have him on this show. So especially if you're out there, you want to work in sports, make sure you listen carefully to a lot of what he was saying. Because like he and many other people have said, you think you know sports, then you realize you really don't when you start sitting down with the analysts. So learn the game if you want to work in sports. Next week, I want to take a break and look back at the first half of 2020. I'm going to discuss some of the episodes, just talk about my thoughts, feelings of what everything that's been happening. So make sure you tune in, subscribe to the podcast each and every place you get your podcast from, whether it's Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher. We are there. And remember, this podcast is brought to you by, produced and edited by B Waters Productions, and the music is by Hypno Beats.